I don't know, I thought it might have been one of those made up things adults tell kids, like vitamins. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 88 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about fashion design. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you for joining me today. And first off, this episode is dropping on Christmas Day. So first off, Merry Christmas, and hope you're having a good time, celebrating, having fun. I'm going to be not working, so that's really nice. I'm going to just be spending the day home with my wife, and we're going to have fun, we're going to have dinner, and we're going to celebrate Christmas, just the two of us, and not see family or anything like that. So that's pretty great. I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are celebrating Christmas the exact same way, so sit down and... So a lot of us are in that same boat, but oh well, I guess. It's still Christmas time and it's still a fun time, so anyway, but what I'm talking about is almost even sadder, or if not just as sad as celebrating Christmas alone. It's the year 2020 for movies, and I'm sitting down and I'm talking about the year in review. And normally what I'd like to do is I do a top 10 list of my favorite movies of the year, and then I do either a top 5 list of my least favorite movies of the year, and we go through like that. But this year is very different because I've only seen 8 new movies this year. 8 2020 releases I've seen. That is an astonishingly low number. Granted, though, I still have not seen Soul, and I have not seen Wonder Woman 1984, which I will be watching over the Christmas weekend, so next week you're going to have a review for Soul, and then probably the week after that will be Wonder Woman 1984, so stay tuned for those reviews that are going to be coming, and they'll be added to my 2020 in review favorite list. But for now, I've only got 8 movies that I want to talk about, and one of them technically isn't even a movie, but because my list was just so small and sad, I felt like I needed to add it anyway. So with my least favorite movies and favorite movie of the year, all of them are on this sad little list. I'm looking at only 8 movies. All of them were released this year. We're going to talk about them, what I liked, what I didn't like. I did full episodes reviewing each and every one of these movies, so if you want, you can go back through the catalog and listen to those reviews in more detail. If not, we're going to talk about this here today, just in little snippets of each one. And going back, I looked at my most anticipated movies of 2020 from the beginning of the year, and there were 20 movies on that list. Of those 20 on that list, I only saw 6 of them, and then the rest were either canceled or pushed into next year. Movies like Black Widow, Death on the Nile, Dune. Everyone knows I'm so excited for Dune. I never got to see so many movies. Top Gun was another one. Godzilla vs. King Kong. All of these movies got pushed into next year or onto streaming. So we'll see. I'll eventually get to watch them. I will be doing a most anticipated movies for 2021 episode in a few weeks once I'm done reviewing Soul and Wonder Woman. So a lot of the movies from 2020 are going to make it onto the list again because they were just pushed back a full year. But other than that, it's just been a very sad year. Only 8 new movies. My record was 2017. I saw 56 new movies in theaters that year. That's more than a movie a week, and oh man, what a year that was. I was just always at the theater, and it was great. It was a wonderful year. It's probably the peak of my movie watching, and I will likely never hit that again, especially given the fact that my wife is due in March, so we're going to have a child, and that's probably going to tamper my movie watching a little bit. But you know what? I'm going to be okay with it. It'll be just fine. So that year, 2017, when I saw 56 in comparison to this year when I saw only 8, and really 1, 2, 3 of these movies I didn't even see in theaters. I saw streaming at home. So what a sad list. Why don't I get to it here? We're going to start off with the worst of the worst, the very worst movie that I saw this year, number 8 on my list, and that's, of course, Artemis Fowl. If you listen to my review of Artemis Fowl, it's not good. It's such a bad movie. It's directed by Kenneth Branagh, which was very promising. It's based off of a children's book that I read as a kid, so that was promising as well. I liked the concept of this boy genius who's a supervillain who captures a fairy and holds her hostage and goes after the fairy community in order to help restore his family's good name. That's not what this movie was. It was very different. they cast Artemis Fowl as more of a hero, but they also didn't make him very interesting. He was very one-dimensional. He didn't have a lot to do. The movie was uninteresting. The action was abysmal. And everything about this movie just made me confused and upset. This movie was a direct to Disney Plus release. It was supposed to be in theaters, but then because of COVID-19, they switched it to going straight to Disney Plus. And so I sat down and I watched it, and I was excited to watch it, and I came away very disappointed. Kenneth Branagh, as you may know, he's directed movies like Thor and Murder on the Orient Express. He was also supposed to release Death on the Nile this year, which is pushed to next year. But he's a pretty respected filmmaker, but every now and then, everybody has a bad day at the office. Everyone can make bad movies, I guess. So this one is one of Kenneth Branagh's bad day at the office. Artemis Fowl is just not a good movie at all. If you want to watch a complete train wreck, I recommend checking it out. But if you're wanting to watch something that's going to keep you entertained or give you something to think about, Artemis Fowl has neither of those to offer. So even though I saw it this year and it's on my list, it's at the very, very bottom. There's absolutely no question about it. There's nothing about this movie that is redeeming in any way or enjoyable. I scratched my head at a lot of it. I didn't understand why a lot of the decisions were made that were made. And really, it fell so flat. It's a disappointment, is what it is. Of all these movies, it's probably the second most disappointing, because number 7 on my list, not as bad a movie as Artemis Fowl, but it's certainly more disappointing, and that's going to be Mulan. The remake of Mulan was long anticipated for me. I was very excited about it. I liked how they were taking it in a seemingly new direction, and I don't have a problem with going in a new direction, but the issue is that some of the decisions they made were just so poor. One of the decisions they made that actually didn't bother me was releasing it on Disney Plus with the premium access and paying $30 for it. That's one of the things that didn't bother me. I mentioned it in the review as well, that if I were to go see this movie in theaters, it probably would have cost me and my wife at least $50 to go watch this by the time we get snacks and everything. So us watching it here at home for $30, and we had my sister here with us as well. So 3 people, that's $10 each. That's not awful. It's quite a bit better. And the more people you have living in your home to pay for it with the premium access, I don't think it's a problem at all. Now, however, I do have issues with giving Mulan superpowers. I have issues with some of the story. I have issues with the action and how goofy it looked. And I have issues with the character of Mulan as a whole. Like, she doesn't really learn anything. She doesn't really develop. And it's just a mess. The characters of her friends are practically non-existent. There's this witch character who is semi-interesting, but not really. And this movie just gave me things that I did not want out of this remake of Mulan. It should have been like a sword and sorcery clash type movie, and we watch big armies fight each other. That's what I was looking out of this movie. Things like The Lord of the Rings, or even to a lesser extent Troy, just something like that, or Gladiator. I was just looking for something that was the story of Mulan, but rooted in a little more realism. And that's not what I got. I didn't get realism. I got a movie that's not a musical. And that's fine. I don't need it to be a musical. I need it to be good. Unfortunately, though, Mulan is not good at all. It's very bad. We took a break about halfway through watching it, and we paused, and me and my wife and my sister were all just sitting there, and we're just like, this is like, we're not loving this movie. There's something about it that's not jiving with us. And then by the time we saw the end of the movie, where Mulan literally kicks an arrow out of the air and into the bad guy to kill the villain, and that's how the villain is defeated, it's really just foolish. The only really redeeming part of this movie is its score. The music is very good, especially when it does callbacks to the original animated version. So there's things to like about Mulan, but very, very little, and overall it's a disappointment of a film. I didn't like it at all, and I will probably never watch it again. But you know what? I'm never going to watch Artemis Fowl again either. And I'm also never going to watch again number 6 on my list. Of 8 movies on my list, 3 of them here I'm never going to watch again because I didn't like them at all. And that's just, It's so sad that almost half of the movies I saw this year were disappointments. And that's just really sad. Actually, 2019 wasn't a great year for movies either. I didn't like a lot of the things that came out, but I at least got to see more than 8 different movies, right? So I'm a little frustrated by that. But number 6 on my list is The New Mutants. Now, if you listen to my review of The New Mutants, you'll know I kind of go into the history of how this movie was supposed to be released. It was supposed to come out 3 years ago. It was just a mess of a production that kept getting delayed and reshoots, and then COVID and all these different things in order to keep this movie from coming out. And eventually we get to see it, and the story behind it being released is far more interesting than the actual movie that we saw. It's just not interesting. And in my review, I said that this movie is a lot like Glass. If you saw M. Night Shyamalan's Glass, that has Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis and James McAvoy, and they're just in a mental institution, but they have superpowers, and that's kind of what this movie was. Almost beat for beat, kind of the same idea, except there isn't a weird secret society at the end. But really, it's not introspective, it's not interesting, it's not like the action isn't interesting. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of questions. We just don't really have anything to like about this movie. And the only reason it's not lower on my list is because Mulan and Artemis Fowl are just worse movies. And this one, at least, it was interesting at least a little bit when they introduced some mysteries and kind of what's going on, but then you easily figure out what's going on, and any other questions that you have just aren't answered, or you're given answers in a way that's confusing and doesn't really make a lot of sense. So New Mutants was a movie that I was interested to see, especially knowing what went on behind the scenes in the creation of this movie and all of the delays. So I was interested in that aspect, but my hopes actually weren't very high. So when I saw the actual movie, and it wasn't that good, I wasn't that disappointed because I didn't expect it to be very good, which unfortunately is the opposite for Mulan. I was very excited for Mulan, and it really let me down. I wasn't that excited for New Mutants, and when it turns out that it was bad, I wasn't too broken up about it. So New Mutants is one of those movies that we finally got to see, and it was whatever. I'll never watch it again, and that's about it. One thing that I'm remembering, though, is that even though I only have 8 movies on this list, I actually went to the theaters a couple of times after they first reopened from COVID. They're closed again now, but when they first reopened, I went and watched The Empire Strikes Back, and I also watched Jurassic Park in theaters, and both of them looked amazing on the big screen. It was all really good. So I did get to watch a couple of older movies on the big screen, but overall, I only got to see these 8 new ones. So why don't I continue on? I just said The New Mutants, so number 5 on my list is not technically a movie, but because my list is so small and sad, I included it anyway, and that's Hamilton. Now, Disney Plus released Hamilton earlier this year, and we got to sit down and watch it. I also did a review for this as well. And Hamilton is a musical, a Broadway musical about Alexander Hamilton, who helped found the United States of America and all the things that he did and kind of his life story. And it was very interesting. It was done in a unique way. The songs were fun and engaging, and the performances were mostly really good. Like I said in my review, I don't think Lin-Manuel Miranda is that great of a performer. So overall, Hamilton was really good and really engaging. I liked it a lot. It was something new and something different. People have been talking about this musical since it first came out, which I think was in 2015 or 16. So Lin-Manuel Miranda, that was kind of his shoot to fame. Like, he had done a couple of other musicals before then, but this was the big one that got all of the attention and all of the awards and all of the accolades and all of the extra jobs for Mr. Lin-Manuel Miranda. So that's interesting. It was good. I think it's still on Disney Plus if you want to watch it. Did they take it off? I have no idea. But it was good. It was interesting. I might watch it again someday. I might not. Who knows? But it's one of those ones that I'm not going to never watch it again because I didn't like it. I'm never going to watch it again because it's just so memorable. It's in my mind and I don't really need to revisit it. They also did a really good job in this musical of using the stage space with what little that they had. It was a very simple set, and all they had was kind of this big rotating disc on the stage that could rotate in multiple directions, and they used that very effectively. I liked that aspect of the stage a lot and everything that they did. The costumes were really great. It looks like they were really hot on that stage, though. The poor guy who plays George Washington, he was just sweating like nobody's business. The guy who plays King George, he was a lot of fun. There's a lot of really good things to like about Hamilton, and it was a really good watch. Like I said in my review, one thing that I would recommend if you're going to sit down and watch Hamilton is give it a go with the subtitles, because some of the lyrics are flying so fast that it's hard to really pick up what they're saying. And so if you're able to read it while listening to them say it, it's a lot easier to understand, and you're able to follow what's going on. I think that's all I've got to say about Hamilton, though. So I'm going to move on to my number 4, my 4th favorite movie of this year. This is going to be Onward. It's a Pixar release, and it's about 2 brothers who are elves, and they go on a quest. And the quest is to spend a day with their dad, who passed away when they were really young, so they never had a chance to really have a relationship with him. And I liked this movie a lot. I kind of described it as the Frozen for boys, because Frozen is all about like the power of sisters and sisterhood and go sisters, yay, amazing. And Onward is about like the bond of brothers and how close they can be. And I really liked that a lot. I thought it was a good story to tell. I was really interested. The magical fantasy type element of the story wasn't the most interesting, but that's fine. I don't need everything to be 100% all the time. But I did really like this movie. The story didn't give these huge, incredible twists. Like, I saw exactly how this was going to end the entire time, but the execution of it was so smooth and so superb that I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with knowing how the story is going to end if the execution of it is perfectly fine. Like, if everything is foreshadowed correctly and it still gives me that emotional impact, then it doesn't matter if I know that it's coming or not. I don't need big surprises all the time. I don't need twists and turns at every corner. They're a lot of fun sometimes, and trying to figure things out can be fun. I try to not predict things, though, but when I'm easily able to see how a story is going to play out, it better be done in a magnificent way. And I would say that Pixar definitely does that with Onward, and I would recommend giving it a watch, especially with Soul coming out. Comes out today on Christmas Day. If you're listening to this on the day of release, Soul is already out on Disney Plus. Go check it out. It's getting some really solid reviews. But before that, if you haven't seen Onward, check out Onward, because it was good too. It's my 4th favorite movie of this year. Not that that's saying very much. Why don't I move on to my number 3? My number 3 is a movie called Weathering with You, and this is an anime film. I cannot remember the name of the director right now, but he also made Your Name, which is phenomenal. Your Name is so good. And Weathering with You is also really good. That's why it's number 3 on my list. But I haven't seen it again since I watched it in theaters. I think I saw it in January, like right when it first came out. And I was really excited about this one, and I liked it a lot. The animation is beautiful. The story is intricate. We've got like a whole lot of questions going on about exactly how all this works, but it's also tied into Your Name a little bit. There's some story crossover things going on, and I liked that a lot. I really liked this movie. As I was going back through my list of all the movies I saw this year, and I saw Weathering with You, I actually kind of forgot that I'd even seen it. I was like, oh yeah, Weathering with You, that movie was really good. I need to rewatch it. I would like to watch it again, and just knowing where the story is going, have a slightly different perspective on everything that's happening, and I can analyze it a little more and go a little deeper, which is one of my favorite things to do with movies. So having that opportunity with Weathering with You, there's definitely layers there that you can dive in and you can pick apart at, and you can really get down into the nitty-gritty of what this movie means. Like I already mentioned, animation is really great, and I do have a full review of this movie if you want to go check it out. It came out earlier this year. That episode was already almost a year ago. That's just crazy, because it feels like 2020 has really dragged, but at the same time, the last month and a half has just flown by. I think it's maybe because I have been working so much lately that it's just flown by. Like, December is almost over, and I can't believe it, because where did all this time go? But at the same time, I was visiting my brother and at his wedding in August, and that feels like forever ago. Feels like last year, you know? So it's crazy. 2020 has been an interesting time for everyone, and the way that you've been coping or the way that you've been interpreting how fast or how slow it's been, I guess that would be different for everybody. But for me, it's been really, really slow up until this last month or so, and then it's just flown by. And now we're at the end of the year, and I'm hoping that moving into 2021, we're going to have a little bit of a better time than we did this year, at least able to watch some more movies. I'm letting myself get distracted here, though. I'm done with Weathering with You. I've only got 2 movies left of my favorite movies of this year. Number 2 is going to be Emma. I saw this movie twice in theaters. I really liked it a lot. I saw it right as theaters were closing down in March. It was the last movie I saw in theaters, and then theaters closed like the next day. And then it was the first movie that I rewatched when movies opened up in theaters again. So Emma is a lot of fun. It's really interesting. It's really humorous. It's well performed. I like the entire cast of this movie. I have very little bad things to say about it because it's just so delightful and charming. It's not huge stakes. It's not end of the world type stuff. It's just a girl who fancies herself as a matchmaker and stumbles along the way of trying to hook up one of her friends with this person and then with this person, and it kind of goes awry in these different ways. It's based off of a Jane Austen novel. I really liked this movie. I found it just so charming. I think at this point I've seen it 3 times. I watched it twice in theaters, and then I bought a copy of it as well. So my wife and I watched it at home once as well. So Emma was just... it was a delight. I've got nothing bad to say about Emma. Really enjoyable, really fun. You should check it out. I think that it's really underrated. A lot of people have not seen it, so I'm trying to recommend it to as many people as possible, just so that it can get out there a little bit more and people can see this delightful little movie, because that's really what it is. It's good. It's worth watching. It's funny. I was laughing throughout the entire thing almost. It's a very quirky, subtle humor, but it's there and it's hilarious. So check out Emma if you haven't seen it. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a really strong movie from a very weak year. It rises to the top as one of the best movies that I've seen this year. I have one movie left. It's the only one that I've seen that is better than Emma, that I enjoyed more, and a lot of you have probably guessed it, is Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I liked this movie a lot. I did have to watch it twice. I recommend the second viewing. On the second viewing, I enjoyed it a lot more than the first one, because sitting through the first 3/4 of the movie the first time, you just have no idea what's going on. And that's very much on purpose. You just have no idea what is happening or how any of this works. And then you get to a very specific scene where it decides, okay, now we're going to explain to you. Now you're going to understand. And it just makes you see everything in a whole different way. When you watch it the second time and you know where everything is going and how everything works, you're able to understand it a lot more. So that is something that I recommend if you're going to check out Tenet. Know going in that probably after the first watch, you might need a second one in order to just really get it. And I'm sure there are people out there who are going to be just fine with this movie after watching it only once, and that's totally fine. I think for a lot of us, we're going to need to watch it twice. Myself included. I needed to watch it twice. I really enjoyed it both times. I've got a poster for it that I am going to be hanging up right away. I've got posters that I cycle out. I think I've talked about this on the show before, but I've got 3 movie poster frames and about 40 posters. So once a month, I cycle out my posters. Right now I've got hanging up 3 Pixar posters. I've got Toy Story 4, Up, and Soul, which are up and ready to go for me to watch Soul on Christmas Day, which is not today when I'm recording, but today when I release it. So next month I'm going to be putting my Tenet poster up because it looks really cool. I love movie posters. It's one of my favorite things, and they're just so cool. I like them a lot. Getting back to Tenet as a movie, though, if I had to give a negative thing to this movie, it suffers from the same problem that Interstellar does, is that you just sometimes can't hear what the people are saying because the background noise is so loud. And Christopher Nolan is aware that people have this problem, and he just does not care. He's making his movie his way, and it doesn't matter. Now, Christopher Nolan can sometimes be really, really stubborn about things, especially when it comes to film versus digital, and when it comes to cinema versus home release. Now, in the case of the Warner Brothers HBO Max release, Christopher Nolan came out and made a statement that he's not okay with what the studio was doing, and they didn't tell the filmmakers, and that was not okay, and I'm 100% on board with him on that. We're definitely in agreement. Warner Brothers should not have done it this way. For some things, Christopher Nolan can be really stubborn about stuff, and because he's Christopher Nolan, he gets to get away with it, I guess, if that's the way I want to word it. It sounds really negative and bad, me saying it that way, but really, he was pushing really hard to get Tenet out into theaters, which I appreciate, but who knows how it could have done if it was released on a home release instead, and we could have all just bought it digitally and watched it at home. Because really, both times when I went to go watch Tenet in the theaters, there were only 3 or 4 other people in the auditorium with me. One of them being the person I was seeing the movie with. So not a lot of people, at least in my city, went to go watch this movie. And I was looking at the box office numbers, and they're not impressive. Who knows what could have happened if they did an at-home release instead. Now, I am a huge proponent of the theater-going experience. I love it. The only issue I have is other people in the auditorium is sometimes an issue where they're talking or being distracting or on their phone or whatever. I sometimes really have issues with that. But if this is a direction that the whole industry is going to, where we're releasing things at home more and more, I think, for one, that's a really good thing for the home theater business. They're going to be raking in money. I'm working on plans for my own home theater system right now and getting a projector and everything set up, and it's going to be amazing in several months when I finally have that all set up. That's way down the road in the project. During 2021, I'm going to have that done, and I'm so excited about that. But theaters as a whole, it's such a special, unique experience that I am remiss to give it up, and I don't want to give it up. I want to still be able to go to the theater and watch a movie on opening night and just have a great time while I'm there. And we're getting farther and farther away from that. But I don't know what point I'm trying to make here, but Christopher Nolan is right on some points and he's wrong on other points. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know. In any case, Tenet was my favorite movie of this year. Granted, I have not seen Soul or Wonder Woman yet. I will, and I will share my thoughts with you guys about those movies when I eventually see them. I think that's going to be it for today, though. So when I run through that list one more time, this very sad, sad list. Number 8 was Artemis Fowl. Number 7, Mulan. Number 6, The New Mutants. 5, Hamilton. 4, Onward. 3, Weathering with You. 2, Emma. And 1, Tenet. That's all the 2020 releases that I saw this year, and it makes me really sad to see how short this list is. What I'm going to do, though, is turn the question over to you. What was your guys' favorite movie that came out this year? How many did you even see? I would love to know the answer to that. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter at PottleNathan, and you can find the show on Instagram at Movies Are Awesome Podcast. You can also email the show at moviesareawesomepod@gmail.com. All that information is in the show notes. You can feel free to go check it out. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to subscribe to the show. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me that more and more people are joining in and listening, and I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas, and as always, if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.